They just poured the thorium and the uranium into these barrels and then covered it with dirt, right? So it became an issue because it's placed next to a garbage refill station. The nuclear waste has been eroding and decaying for so long, for decades, that's become this nuclear waste food, which is actually caught fire. It's caught fire through chemical combustion, like when you compost leaves, right? It's not an actual elemental fire, it's a chemical fire. So now there's a chemical fire, and this nuclear waste is smoldering under the West Lake landfill.
Jesus.
Yeah, and so I didn't know where fluorescent was, and I just Googled it.
Exactly. Go ahead, tell it, brother.
Yeah, fluorescent is 6.8 miles from Bridgeton, where the
You better come on.
where the landfill is. So it would not surprise me that it's connected to the same issue of the nuclear waste dumping. And so part of the issue that this brother was talking about is how hazardous waste, most of it, was dumped in so-called black neighborhoods that were just being developed after World War II, right? So if you look at all of the neighborhoods around St. Louis Airport, black neighborhoods. You go south about 15 miles, you have Ferguson. So
Right.
you have Ferguson, and then you go north about 6.5, 6.8 miles, you have Fluorescent. You go west, you start hitting the low-income white neighborhoods. So that whole triangle was it North St. Louis County, has had this issue with the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers going back. So they first discovered it, I think, back in the 70s. And it was a company that went defunct called Mallinckrodt. So if you look up Mallinckrodt, they were the main ones that were developing all of this atomic and nuclear energy. And they actually admitted that they illegally dumped it. And there was a whole documentary about how they would drive it from down St. Louis. They just dumped it, because the suburbs weren't built up then. So they would just dump it on the outskirts of the city. And then when the city in North St. Louis was built up, they built a lot of these homes just on top of that existing dirt. So I just wanted to give you a little history on that, and it very much may be connected to that same issue. So thank you for the time.
That came up in the meeting that he just said. I couldn't get all that out because I'm so excited about what's happening. But that same thing, that same what you're talking about, that history came up in the meeting, and they were stating in that meeting that I got on. And I was just blessed to even get on it because it was really for a community that was in. It was called what they had named it. There's a community, and I don't know if you guys know it. I think it's underground, but it's called the Elder Black Funding, and it's a huge community, and it's been around for years. And the reason they formed it, Martin, was because of what he just said. Because they were pouring out all this nuclear radioactivity, all this waste up on land that black communities, they knew black communities were going to be built because of what the land is worth. The land value drove down once they started pouring all that on those lands. So they knew all the waste on the land in that area that this was going to happen. And all of it is connected. So when you're talking about radioactive waste, and brother, help me Eagle Hawk, when you're talking about radioactive waste, this is something I learned even on the call, you're talking about something that spreads through the dirt. It doesn't just stay there. It grows when everything else grows. It moves like everything else moves, especially when you're moving around dirt and you're building on that land. There was different ways they were saying chemically and how that reacts and how it moves from different communities to different communities and the way in the building process. But it drove down the price of the land, and the reason why the Lord figured out they had been throwing waste on those areas, that area, particularly what he's talking about, and the other area, 6.5 miles, 5 point something miles for years. And that's why they bought it, the developers did, and built on it. And they were told that they had did all the testing before they developed. And the lawyers are proving that's what they're out to prove, is you didn't do the testing. You bought it because it was cheap, because that waste has been going on for years. So that did get rid of. Thank you, brother, for bringing that point.
Oh, you're welcome. Just to answer that real quick. So in Bridgeton, they have, put a title, a label on it by the EPA. as a hyper cancer cluster, and I think it's 1 out of 3 people that specifically live in Richmond. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, 1 out of 3 people develop some form of cancer, and this includes children as well.
Wow.
So any child under the age of 18 has some type of cancer, whether it's blood cancer, you know, bone cancer. It's just terrible. So, and there's a documentary that films this where the chemical vapors, as the sister was saying, seep through the soil. So on certain days, they literally have to close their windows, because if the windows are open, they get nauseous and they get sick. And you know, in the documentary on Christian, you know, they went to the hospital to try to confirm this, and they say on a daily basis we have at least 4 dozen people that come in when the wind is blowing, you know, from the landfill, who have nausea, so forth and so on. And the EPA has confirmed this, you know, through the environmental testing, you know, on the soil. And then so one of the legal cases with Bridgeton, you know, in that area, is they had the soil tested on people's homes, you know, to see if it was traveling. And they confirmed that on certain days, it definitely is airborne, you know, because it rises to the surface. You know, and in the documentary, they show little puddles, you know, I think it's just mud, but this is chemical waste that has seeped to the surface, you know, and so it's spread into that, and in that area, there's a place called Coldwater. Coldwater Creek is a tributary that flows into the St. Louis River. And so when you go down to Ferguson, they had an issue as well several years ago, and they found out that it was coming north from Coldwater Creek, which was, you know, flowing into St. Louis, going down into the city itself. So I would say any waterway, you know, not just the land, but any waterway, you know, in those specific areas, you know, probably has a high level of contamination as well.
Thank you.
I want to say, when you hear any the waterways, the first thing I think is they're unconnected. So the ocean, you know, all for greed. That's what this is all about. All for greed. That we live in an environment that would allow this to happen for greed. And it makes us want to pray and believe in God even more.
I got to go back to what you said. I got to be Auntie Cheryl for a minute. This is part of the enslavement. This is the evil that we see, you know, what was done to us. And let's be clear, when it comes to, yes, there's greed, but there's also a hatred that you see in these situations. There's just a, you know, animus, just you know, intolerance. And it's amazing to me that in 2022, we see Black people saying, according to CVS, that 11% more of us this year are facing mental health trauma. Like, maybe we're finally admitting it and we're being truthful to ourselves, you know, but like, I try my best in this room to give stories that empower and inform and come from a solution basis, because otherwise you will, to me, people don't want to hear the news because of this type of stuff. But what for me, this particular subject matter is really about us. And I'm so happy that Sister Summers came in, Brother Eagle came in, and they informed us of really what's happening on the ground. So now I don't think the next 10 years, if any of us that's in this room, I don't think for the next 10 years, we're going to look at, you know, wastewater, environmental issues the same way. This conversation will impact, hopefully, us and our families for at least 10 years, because we are going to be checking everything, every report. And the crazy thing, I'm going to go to Sister Michelle next, but the crazy thing that's in this newspaper article, this news article, is that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers agree with the Boston Chemical Data report. So the Army, as what Brother Eagle said, they're saying, yeah, there is radioactive nuclear waste right here. Yep, that's true. And yet it's still the St. Louis or the state of Missouri agency, I'm putting air quotes, agency is like, no, we cleaned it up. No, that's not the case. I had no idea it was a documentary. I had none of that. Sister Michelle, I know you have something to contribute.
Martin, I always love these types of discussions. I just want to go back to as far as testing and actually providing notices to buyers. Some states, you do not have to disclose some of this information. And so it's really important to understand and ask people locally, like you said, and go to the library or go online to really do your due diligence. Long story, go ahead, Mark.
No, I'm sorry, I have my mic open.
Oh, okay. And so they may still not disclose if you ask because they may not legally have to. Number two, remediation, I would not be surprised if somebody is on the tape. Remediation, when they look at if they truly got it tested, or whenever it was tested, they knew what was there and they knew at least at that point in time how much money it would cost. And depending on how it is spread, how it had leached into water, whether the area can even be salvageable. I have a very good suspicion they would never go back into that school.
Well, I hope not.
If the Corps of Engineers,
I would hope not.
yeah, because even after cleanup, you're still waiting to test and see what is going on. And so if at that level, I can't be for sure because I'm not a nuclear engineer. I have plenty of friends who are, that's not a joke. But just knowing what I know, they may not ever open that land up to be livable in our lifetime. Just from the decay, the amount of decay, the calculations you have to do to find out when a property or a piece of land is no longer radioactive, it will not be in our lifetime. And so they may never ever use that property again. And then the last thing is, wherever it is directly located on the property, when the construction crews came in, you do your own soil boring. So it must have been deeper than the foundation over excavation to where the developer didn't hit it. And so it may not be directly, that means it's spread from wherever it is in relation to that school. And so what I mean is you'll take, let's say the size of a cokehead, and you'll take
MP is providing at the end of the document. When a person who owns the property containing the landfill decides to sell the property, the owner is required to take several actions to comply with the Missouri Solid Waste Management Law. Regulation Missouri Revised Status Section 260.213 RSMO states, no person may knowingly sell or convey or transfer title to any property that contains a permitted or unpermitted solid waste disposal site or demolition landfill without disclosing to the buyer earlier in the negotiation process the existing location and the site. The seller shall not notify buyer that he may be assuming a liability to the state for any, the seller may have to notify the buyer that he's assuming a liability to the state for any remedial action at the site. Therefore, the property owner is under legal obligation to notify any potential buyer of the presence of a landfill on the property to ensure the buyer or even in close proximity. Y'all better not be for the play up in here. They knew what they was doing, woman of God, and somebody in a high place, like old lady said, sorry, elderly lady, black and brown lady, said somebody made some money off of this. And I wanted to correct myself with that as well. There was a Black Community Fund, which is Greater Kansas City Community Foundation, is actually was a part of this. That's where I got the information. You know, that's where they had the Zooms that are having the meetings, because some of the family members are living in Kansas City, Missouri, so they're including all the family members in these meetings. Because like you said, man of God, Eagle, you said your family, I live here, but my family, so they got families, they live in Missouri, they can be a part of these meetings. But literally, they've already got legal representation. Lawyers are coming out like wolves because they know this was not done properly. Did y'all hear that whole law right there? I digress.
So
Yeah.
was it listed originally as a landfill when the school went to buy the property?
It says in the when you're looking at the what Martin has up here, even when we talked about it in the meeting, there anything close proximity, even if a landfill was close, and it was, because Bridge, what'd you say, Eagle Hawk Bridge, Hawk,
It was Bridgeton, which is 6
6
miles.
point something miles away. Yes,
But there's a couple of them all around that area. You know,
exactly.
there's like a dozen different known landfill sites from the atomic energy that was produced in St. Louis City, where they dumped it all in St. Louis County. So fluorescent would be sort of like right in the middle of a food cancer cluster. So what the sister was talking about, Marina, is spot on. But they have to legally give you notice and let you know, because there's a high chance of it causing cancer, to let you know before you even buy the land. Yes, there was radiation dumped here, whether it was 60 years ago, 30 years ago, you know, what have you. So, and they were dumping this stuff up in 1970s, the early 70s. So that's part of it. So if you find that there's waste on your property and you were not informed before you bought the property, what she's saying is you can sue both the corporation and the state, because the state knew way back during World War II. You know, they knew this stuff. So by law, you know, people have to let you know. Like, so let's say you have a toxic piece of land now. You can't sell it without letting the real estate company and the future buyers know. You know, so a lot of these people that have toxic land are stuck in the hole with it, you know, because who's going to want to buy toxic land? You know, once you notify them and say, hey, you know, I have a piece of land that's a half an acre, but cancer cluster site. You know,
And then that depends on the state. Each state is different. And
Each state is different, but Missouri was on it. They made it clear.
Well, I don't know about that, because depending on how that lawyer really interprets that, in a conjunction would have to be, it could show up differently. And I'm just going back to something that happened in North Carolina with where it was leaching. Duke Energy had a waste site. It was leaching into the water. It was the liner that was faulty. And it went out for miles, right? So it really depends on what they consider in proximity to that property. If they say less than 10 or less miles and within that radius, then it's different. And so it's really going to depend on how the judge and how the law is, what they can consider within a certain distance. They would have to measure it, because nuclear waste is different than what people think. And so it's really going to come down to what experts they bring in and how they can show and depict how to interpret that law. It is not as clear as y'all think it is, but because they can bring in different nuclear experts and say, hey, we didn't consider this in conjunction because X, Y, and Z and how nuclear waste gets spread. And that's literally how they're going to fight that.
Well, this is a really interesting conversation. I want to thank everybody for contributing. I would just want to ask, can we share this room? I very rarely ask to share stuff. Never hear me say it. But I really do want this conversation to be heard far and wide. I've actually went to Facebook and done some posting over there because I really do want all of you are informing me, and when I'm informed, I'm like, I need my family to be informed, my community to be informed. So this is an excellent conversation. Just take a moment and share the room out. And we don't even ask y'all to follow the house. That's not something we do here. If you want to, that's fine, but that's not. But in this conversation, I need family to show up, pull up, and there should be 100 people in this room being informed, just as we are. One of the things that I thought about when you said what you said, Michelle, is that who's been, not who, but there's been a big push in the United States to bring in nuclear energy as so-called safe energy, or so-called pure energy, and not dirty energy to replace coal. And something I had never, I just didn't feel right about it. I've actually been approached by a couple of lobbyists to promote nuclear energy to the Black community. And I'm so glad I never took them on their offer. But I was like, I don't really, like, if there's a meltdown, I'm a kid of 7 Mile Island. I mean, I remember 7 Mile Island and everybody's fear. And, so I'm like, I'm good, bro. And there's a Black guy, he works for nuclear. Like, no, run. Nuclear energy is so pure. We need to have a nuclear plant in every community. I'm like, well, what about the waste? Oh, no, we got a system. And what you just said, thank you, Eagle, for posting this article in the chat around CBS. This is from 2013. I was like, wait, what? And when you see it in print, you hear it, but when you see it in print, that this company and these people that in the article that Brother Eagle has put up, it's from CBS Evening News, and it's really, I only see one Black. I don't know if he's Black, Blackish person. These are all white folks who have cancer, and in a St. Louis suburb. But when you read the article, one of the things that comes apparent to what you just said, Sister Michelle, was that the issue people are talking about is that uranium ate through the liner. I'm like, well, who thought uranium was not? That's like acid, I mean, some stuff. I never went to chemical engineering. I did love science, but just some basic stuff. I just don't know that I would handle acid in my hand for 40 years and expect it not to eat through whatever I'm holding in my hand. It's just like, and uranium was supposed to be last in these containers. It's just like, dude, why are we even effing with this garbage? Like, people, we need to stop. It's just, come on, nuclear energy, it ain't that serious.
We need to do 2 nuclear plants, and I'll say we, because that's the industry I come out of, building them. One was here in South Carolina, the others over out of Georgia. Number one, we don't have the talent. The talent has already died. I worked with a construction manager. He graduated undergrad in nuclear engineering from Texas A&M in 1977. So the talent that we had in the 70s to even build it, when they went to build these plants in the early 2000s, let's say 06 to around 2015, I'm trying to remember when they shut it down. We don't have the talent in the U.S. to do it anyway. And we can't bring in international talent because that's against our laws when it comes up to anything nuclear. We will continue to operate our nuclear plants. In my opinion, the U.S. will have a mixed use of energy. Solar and other forms of energy have not grown as quickly as for various reasons. It's the same thing as electric vehicles. GM did it early. GM did it first here in the U.S. It did not take off. They completely scrapped everything. And if we should go to electric cars, we'll research the batteries, right? And so it really is going, in my opinion, it's going to take a mix of things. Everybody should go to wind. There's some issues with birds and windmills and them running in there. And I've seen the aftermath of one burning out so high, it was so tall. It just had to burn itself out because fire trucks can't get to it, right? And so there are always going to be instances and issues with with whichever type of energy we go with, unless we just have no energy at all.
That
I
is
think-
so sad to hear.
Yeah. So we just say mixed use. We ain't going nowhere. We're gonna have something's going to something else grows, but we're never going to be without one. I would anticipate, not in our lifetime.
Well, okay. So I hear what you're saying, Michelle, and those are really good points. And maybe we need to do it on a tech night. We need to do a separate, tech night conversation to dive into some of those issues. For me, in this conversation right now, I'm just saying that nuclear energy, the waste of nuclear energy, like that is an issue. That's a huge issue. And maybe to your point, we need to sponsor some new blood and get some new nuclear engineers just in cleanup. Like take all this money. So I see Brother Eagle is putting in a bunch of different links in the chat. And yeah, they're gonna spend money on testing. Great. Take that. We know it's there. Y'all already we got tons of tests. We don't do tests no more. Close the school down, block off the area, whatever, what have you. Now take some money and put some money into the school system, into the college rather, to get some new fresh blood in here and come up with innovative and maybe some grants and come up with some innovation on how to get rid of this waste. Like, what can we do? And maybe to your point, the brain trust is gone, but we got to develop new brain trust, because if this is bad as it is, not if, but it is as bad as you're describing it, and not if, it is as bad as you're describing it, then there is a real crises in St. Louis or in Missouri, and it may end up being half of the. I see what Brother Eagles put that the U.S. Representative Cori Bush, who's representing Missouri in the House of Representatives, maybe it's half of the state or 3/4 of the state, or maybe it's all the black areas, right? So then we need to get the black people out, reparations, and give them to move to the white areas. But my point is, we need to figure out what to do. And it's, now that you're talking about different things, I'm rethinking about what I've heard about being around nuclear plants. And I'm just having all these flashbacks from Jersey. And it's just like, yeah, you really can't have people live, on top of that soil. It's just, and one lady, not sister, but one of the cancer victims, because she's passed on, she said, please do not bury me in St. Louis. Like, I do not want to be buried near this soil. And that's really real. Like, she's like, my body is not, I'm dying from this already. This is a slap in the face, an insult upon injury, Wow, thank you. I did not, when I put this room together, I was really putting it together it's about the school, and, my heart goes out to these parents. And just, Marina and I haven't spoke for a while. She comes to them. This is all alignment. This is all what Spirit is making happen in the moment, because I had no idea Marina was actually, I would have reached out if I knew. One quick side note and point, since both of you, Eagle and Marina, you're here. Any thoughts on this whole thing about the Kansas City police department and them denying that there was a serial killer targeting Black women? Last week, we did have the Black news outlet, Kansas City Defender, the editor-in-chief, who reported in September that there was a serial killer, and the report was denied, and the white media outlets and also the police department said nope. And then unfortunately, one of his victims, alleged victims, I have to say, was she escaped out of his clutches and was able to get to a neighbor a week ago. And she mentioned, and after she got to the police, that he had 2 other women down there and he had killed those 2. So in your travels through Kansas City and Kansas and Missouri, any feedback from your family members or people around you around this case of the serial killer targeting Black women in Kansas City?
If I can speak real quick, I worked for the Department of Corrections. I was a chaplain. The Department of Corrections had a lot of lawsuits for racial, for basically discrimination. Missouri Department of Corrections Division got sued at a very high level and has been getting sued on a regular basis. I don't know if anybody knows that. You can look it up.
No, I didn't know that.
They had several lawsuits that came against them, and I left because of that reason. I was a chaplain, and the warden that was hiring all women, and she was trying to get different ethnic. I called her real quick too, Martin. I went to the office and I said, "Are you trying to get I noticed you got all women in your office and very few men, but I noticed all your women have different, ethnic or minority ethnicity." And she said, "Yes, I'm really trying to." Well, lo and behold, that same prison had been sued for, racial slurs toward, some of the African American employees that were working there and discrimination. But Missouri has many lawsuits against them, and the correctional facility. Correctional facility to me is still connected to commissioners, still connected to me. I'm somebody.
Yeah, I got you.
So I feel like for me, I truly believe they're doing what they've been doing. It's all racial. They don't care. And so they really need to get some new blood that has a heart for all, black and white and green and yellow and pink and blue. I mean, I'm just putting it out there, but they need to get that in there, and they don't. They keep passing the baton to oldie but goodies that were in the position, and now you're the commissioner, and now you're the
right.
That's what I see, and I see that only because I'm a chaplain in the correctional facilities for years in Missouri. So that's what I can say about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I agree with the sister. Whenever I've spent time in summers and winters, in Kansas City and St. Louis, one of the things I noticed is that there's a completely different vibe, a vibration when you're inside the city proper. And the more that you go out into the suburbs, it becomes more
racist.
Yeah, you could feel it.
Yeah.
And so black and white people, they get along, to keep moving forward in public. But you could feel that
private
this tension and bias, it's very
palatable, very palatable.
Yeah, you can feel it. The looks, it's still there. Now they change up their roles when they're in the city. They act a little different. They act a little more. When you get into the suburbs, the farther out you go, the more it's there. And like what the sister is saying, I don't think they know how to properly investigate their own kind. If you know what I mean. Yep. To open up that old wound to really get to the root of it, because it still festers in so many aspects of society there, from the low income ranks to people in positions of power, and definitely with the police forces. Even inside the cities, you can have black and white.
Good old boy system, yeah.
White cops on the same call, and sometimes the black cops have to check the white cops because they're acting up, and that still happens even today. So you can imagine when you go 15 to 20 miles out, where there's only one black cop on the police force of a couple hundred.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Well, thank you both. The thing that I was talking about just a few minutes, if anybody just joined the room, was just really last week's room that we had a special report. It seems like these Saturdays we keep having special reports, but it just turned out that way. But we had Kansas City Defender, the editor from that small Black-owned nonprofit news organization that correctly reported that there was an alleged serial killer targeting Black women, actually kidnapping them from one specific street or area in Kansas City. And the police department denied that and said that was unfounded. And then a month later, one of his victims, alleged victims, escaped from his hellhole, torture hole in his own house as he took his daughter or son, whichever, his child to school. She was able to break free and said that there were two other women that were down there with her that he killed. And when the news did the research on this person, it's right on his Facebook. He says, "I want to kill Black people." Just everything you both just said. He did not, on his Facebook, he said, "There's a race war happening. I'm a nationalist. I'm going to kill as many Black people as I can." I mean, excuse me. And it was just, undeniable, not saying that denying his crime that he's accused of, which thank goodness, knock on wood, he's still, I just checked this week to make sure he's still locked up, has not made bail. His bond is $500,000, should be $2 million really. But that, even in that scenario, he's gonna let serial killer kidnap women and his bond is $500,000, which means he just has to raise $50,000, which probably selling his house or getting a lien against the house, he could get out probably.
Now, if it was us, it'd been over 10 million.
Listen, no, it would be no bail. It would be no bail. Like, if it was a black serial killer killing white women.
Okay, that part.
Yes, he would be like, please, they would be getting the chair ready. They would already have the date set.
We wouldn't even have a trial. What are you talking about?
Right. Oh, he slipped and fell.
About killing him, giving him the gas.
Right. Not even waste the chair, the electricity on him, right? So I just wanted to update people on that and get information from you two who actually are, residents or have family in Missouri. Tonight's topic was this article here about the Missouri elementary school that's closing due to radioactive, not inactive, but radioactive nuclear waste found in the soil. And the crazy thing to me about this is that this wasn't the first report. Now, maybe this is the first report. Thankfulness that Boston Chemical Data, did the report because it was funded by law firms that are litigating a class action lawsuit. So this is an outside law firms coming in and saying, "Hey, our consultant found this is the case." But there's a U.S. Army Corps report this year that agrees with this report. That was the first report. So it's just horrible that these kids are exposed to this. But the larger and I think not more impactful, but the larger impact that I want to have with this conversation is for us to think about, we're in now what's called the Great Migration. And this is according to Politico. We have done several rooms on the Politico articles about it's called the next Great Migration. And Black people are leaving California for Texas. And Black people are leaving Chicago and DC and Atlanta. So it's really interesting how the Politico series of articles, I've never seen a politics website or a politics news show or anything dive into, in my 51 years on this planet, I've never seen any PBS, C-SPAN, no place that has quote unquote boring or wonky news, meaning that that's not the hype news, not about sports, not about entertainment, spend as many months and weeks. And these articles are 4,000 words. These articles have videos, they have pictures. They deploy people to these cities to get this exhaustive story of how Black people are leaving typical Black urban areas for certain new places in America. And my concern is, as we do this migration, are we really investigating where we're moving to and what we have to face when we move there? I'm really concerned. I'm glad that Texas has a really open gun law because, as what's happening to many places, we're being targets. And so now that this huge number of Black people are moving to Dallas, I guarantee there will be a target. But the thing that, to me, that may save us in some of these situations is we are moving to states that have open gun laws. So, we can at least defend ourselves. But moving to a state that does not allow you to defend yourself, it's really, to me, dangerous in this day and time. Any final words, final comments from anybody in the audience or anybody on stage? Please, feel free.
Yes, I'm going to say this, that this entire room, I don't look at the news anymore, so just to hear words like, and they were killed, in my mind, I'm like, they didn't make it. I'm just so sensitive to words now, because of what it does to the psyche and the spirit. And then this whole episode of this room makes me understand the power of believing in faith. Because when it all comes down to it, the cards are stacked so seriously against, there's got to be a bigger plan by the Creator who created us. And so this all increased my faith
and a voice for Ford. Sure, I'll pass the mic.